So, you want to be a flat earth believer? Well, this is part 2 of this video series. This I would call level 2. Be sure to check out the first part as it covered all the basic ground, what your mindset should be, some talking points to convert others, understanding what family meant, and some basic tips on photos and videos. I strongly suggest you get comfortable with the basic before moving on to this level 2 video. It will be a bit more extensive and will be focused on particular areas. So let's begin. Did you know that the first digital camera was released by Kodak back in 1975? Due to the operating cost being much lower, it soon became mainstream. Before that, we used physical silver crystal to capture the image. But when it came to digital, well, this is how a digital image really looks like. These are all zeros and ones that apparently represent an image. Then the computer parses all these numbers and generates an image. This is really quite simple to understand. With the advent of digital photography, all of a sudden, it was much easier to generate a realistic looking image. If we look at any of the Marvel movies, we know how good all those fake images can be. We know the dinosaurs are not real, but computer generated in Jurassic Park. When we look at photos of Earth from space, we can notice clouds around the world that looks exactly the same. Now just ask yourself, we know how different clouds can look. Then how can different clouds from space look the same? Unless, wait for it, it was manipulated. Who remembers seeing this photo? Do I need to say any more? At times, you will get into a debate with stupid globers. Now, I will give you the best tool you can get to help you with any debate. Are you ready? The best tool is a technique called Gish Gallop. It is a solid strategy, and the idea is to overwhelm your opponents with as many arguments as possible. This serves a couple of different purposes. Obviously, your opponent won't be able to respond properly in most cases, and at the same time, if anyone is keeping score, you would be scoring a lot more. Next trick may be a little bit dirty, but completely warranted. We are talking about people here who refuses to read Zetetic astrology, so make them work. Don't put down any sources to begin with. They can always Google it, right? Same with photographic location. Unless we're carrying a barometer, we cannot reliably say what our altitude is. And we all know that GPS is not exact coordinate. Now, if you do have to cite sources, try to be as vague as possible. Again, make them work for those bucks. Now, here are some example statements that you can make through your debate. Please think of some more ideas and share in the comments below. I saw that several recently published papers disproved globe Earth. So clearly, many scientists don't believe that it's real. There is a lot of debate and disagreement in the scientific community regarding the shape of the Earth. You keep saying that Earth is a globe, yet wherever we look, we see a flat horizon. Now, for some additional score, you can follow up the previous statement with, if the Earth was a globe, it would be difficult to explain why you get to see Mount Canigou or Chicago skyline from that far away. Finally, try to make statements supported by your previous statements. This will only help hammer the point home. Or you can do the reverse version, where new statement points out previous statements. Just as an example, if you're showing them a photo that has a horizon, casually point out how the horizon is always straight. If it has a lake or an ocean, jokingly point out that the water is not curved. You get the gist. On my tips video, I explained how ignorance is your greatest strength. Simply put, most people are not science savvy enough to know all the intricate details that supposedly governs our world. But once in a while, you are bound to run into someone who might have expertise in a particular field. As one would say in a legal system, we have been given no prior notice to testify, no discovery of any test he has conducted or reports he has prepared, and as the court is aware, the defense is entitled to advance notice of any witness who will testify, particularly those who will give scientific evidence, so that we could properly prepare for cross-examination, as well as to give the defense an opportunity to have the witness's report reviewed by a defense expert who might then be in a position to contradict the veracity of his conclusions. The same really applies also in real life. Be the expert in the room. Read the people around you. Ask them some questions to estimate their science savviness. Don't get into a discussion when they know more on a particular subject. Even a kid would know more on Fortnite than you and me. So don't argue Fortnite with them. To be honest, I was not sure if this should be a level 2 or a lot higher up. It is a people learning skill. Finally, I decided it might be better to give it here so you can have more practice. On my first video, I gave you some talking points. At that time, I mentioned, in my opinion, the ideal talking points are those that needs very little preparation or props, and they need to be easily understandable. Keeping it within the same frame, here are 2 more talking points for you. But these are to be used after assessing the mental acumen of your audience. For the first one, start with the space, and that sign says that it is a vacuum. Make sure your audience is in agreement before moving on. Then bring them down to earth. Ask them if they know what we need to exist. Do not ask in a pedantic way, but more like a rhetorical question sort of a way. And then immediately give the answer. The pause between the question and your answer should be just enough time for your audience to register your question in their mind. One to one, look at their eyes and you will soon figure out the exact timing. Well, let's run through the dialogues. Obviously, change it to suit your need. Here goes. Do you know what we, you and me, need to exist? We need air, right? Our lungs breathe in the oxygen and passes through every part of our body. Really neat. And this oxygen is also needed for other things like lighting fire. If you take a lit candle and cover it with a glass, it would go off. That is because the fire used up all the oxygen inside, and most of the fire extinguishers actually work by keeping the oxygen away from the fire. Now, if space is a vacuum, it has no oxygen, then how can a spaceship fly with the burning flame, right? Next talking point I have for you is a follow-up from this primer. Think of a balloon. What happens when you break it? This time, wait for an actual answer from the audience. Someone is bound to say it burst. That is your cue. Exactly. Because the air inside the balloon wants to rush out all at the same time through that small hole, and thus it burst. Now, why does the air wants to come out? Simply put, thermodynamics. The air inside has a higher pressure and it wants to equalize with the surrounding. Now think of our atmosphere. How can this sit next to a vacuum? Shouldn't the atmosphere behave the same way? You can't cheat thermodynamics. So what is going on? Maybe there is a dome, and that acts like the balloon that holds the air in place. We don't know, but we know the pressure can't sit next to a vacuum, right? For your homework, come up with a dialogue involving Van Allen radiation belt. These are radiation zone outside Earth that is enough to kill any human. Have fun. Go get them, tiger.